White looks to throw. He wants Boyd deep. Help over the top. Boyd adjusts. 1,000 and a score. Wilson drives in. She scores. Jensen, Grayson, give and go. Jensen elevates and she slams it down again. Arlo, top of the box, a drive, and he fires it in. As Concannon hammers the back line. Striplings fires it up. Spencer in space. Just got it. Touchdown, Sarah Catholic. Blocks quick out to Martin. Breaks the tackle. Martin cuts far side. There goes Quinton. See you later. One play. Touchdown, Leopards. Quinton Martin for 6 from 36.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 87 of the Valley Sports Guys podcast. I am one of your three hosts today, Jeremy Salou, sports editor of the Mon Valley Independent, joined by MVI Live and multimedia director Alex Lyons, and not Jose Negron. Dawn Hartman is filling in for Jose today. Welcome, everybody, to this episode, and we're going to get right into it. Alex, you saw a pretty lopsided football game, but before we get to that, we're going to start with the mighty Commodores of Fraser High School.
Yes, go Fraser.
Finally in the win column again. Deja vu like last year. The Commodores beat Springdale 20-14, and Coach Hartman here in the box with us. And Alex asked me, was it a good game? And it was an excellent football game Friday night.
It was. I mean, it was very entertaining. The games went back and forth, and Fraser was able to couple some really big plays to pull out the win. I know the guys have been working hard. They didn't want to have a winless season, that's for sure. And they had some big games from a few big players that we've been expecting. So they pulled it off.
You're talking to Coach Shannon afterwards, and I don't think, Alex, you might know, but I asked him, when was the last time two Commodores went over 100 yards rushing in a game? He wasn't sure. He said probably during the Mike Stieber days, but they threw the ball a lot too. So
I would say definitely my senior year, and I'm not sure about the year after, just because LA left after soon after. But you would have probably had a Hunter Patterson as a junior,
as a quarterback, the quarterback, and the running back,
and even you might have had an LA Nick Smallage 100-yard game in there as well. So I think very much so it would have been back in my senior year. Would have been probably one of the last times, if not the year after, when they went to the semifinals and Patterson was still the quarterback there. So it's kind of one of those. I forget who the back was that replaced LA after Patterson, or after LA left when Patterson was still quarterback, but it would have probably been either that 14 season or the 15 season, in my opinion, would have been the last time they probably would have got there, because then everything started bumping up, and after that, it's been tough sledding for them.
Derek Diamond led the way for the Commodores with 108 yards on 19 carries. Chase Fulmer, just a sophomore, rushed for 103 yards. Obviously, the big play, the 65-yard touchdown run on the Commodores' first drive to get things off to a good start. But the play of the game was the fourth down conversion. Brendan Stewart throws to Andrew Bandish, who goes up over the defensive back and hauls in the – we all, jumped out of our seats up in the box. We were surprised he caught it, too. Congratulations to the Commodores. Congratulations to Coach Shannon. Like Coach Shannon said at the end of the game, what it was all about was getting to see the football team, the cheerleaders, the student section rush the field, but just to get to see them celebrate – over by the locker room with the band and everything, that's what it's all about. So congratulations to the Commodores on their win. Alex, you had a lopsided win. Obviously, the Fraser game was the closest game of any game, all weekend long, but you had the Elizabeth Forward Warriors improving to 8-0.
Yeah, and here's the thing about this Warriors team. I don't think it's going to be this year, but they are going to be for real for the next couple of seasons. I think once the classifications kind of resettle and get back to maybe what we expect them to be. This is going to be a Warriors team that's going to be primed to compete not just back for the Interstate Conference Championship again, but I think a team that's going to compete for district titles again because they're led by an absolute stud at quarterback, in my opinion. I love Ryan Messina. Got the size, got the big-time arm, and he's just a sophomore and is getting so much valuable experience this year. They're undefeated this year. Obviously, they're going to most likely, barring an utter shocking loss on Friday, they're going to go into Bell Vernon's matchup undefeated. And they've played a lot closer games this year, which I think is going to help them in the long run. But it's going to be tough sledding against Bell Vernon because that's going to be the first time that Chris Climbs and Charlie Meelab are going to face an opposing line that good. But this is a team, they just went out, they dominated. Charlie Niggett did his thing, 2 40-plus yard touchdown runs. Messina, only 1 or 2 incompletions, put some absolute dimes right on Isaiah Turner, thinking for his first touchdown, ran for a touchdown. I mean, that team is so good, and even without Alex Jeddick, who went down against Southmoreland, who's a big part of that line, they continue to just dominate. And again, SA, talking to Coach Hansen, and I think he was probably say the same thing. His kids never stopped. That's what he hopes. Going into games like that, they've been injury after injury on South Allegheny side. He said, my kids don't stop trying. That's what I asked for out of them. And we talk about, EF and 3A maybe becoming the cream of the crop in the most open classification next year. Does South Allegheny bump down to 2A and maybe get a rejuvenation moving down next year? And as a possibility even.
Well, it's going to be real interesting to see because, I think schools had to have their numbers sent in last Friday.
That's right.
So that's right, because you have an AD in the house now, so you know all this.
I do.
So when did you send in your numbers? Did you do it this year?
Yeah. Well, I didn't, but she did, yeah.
But so with them counting every student is 1-to-1, which I don't know why you wouldn't do that in the first place, but talking to EF, don't be surprised if they get stuck moving back up to 4A with all the tech kids that they have and everything like that. So it's going to be real interesting. I think we'll see right after the Whitfield Championships is when they usually release the numbers of where the cutoffs are going to be. Then you start to hear the rumblings of, oh, we're going to move up. Because we knew Bell Vernon was going down a month before they officially announced they're going down.
Yeah.
So, but you're going to have, hopefully for SA's sake, they go back down, or you see the EFs and the Bell Vernons move back up because they got a talented young football team. It's just, Coach Hansen knows you're not going to compete with the EFs and Bell Vernons yet. I mean, you're just not there. But, he did a great job at West Green. He knows how to build a program, and that's what he's leading to. You mentioned Cam Epps, 19 carries, 97 yards. Came against the JV kids, but still he's getting his yards. He's still playing hard. And, as a coach, I'm sure, Coach, you could talk about this, but all you want is to see the effort. That's what you want to see from your team. Even if you're going out and getting pounded, you want to see that never say die, never quit attitude.
Right.
Looking at some other scores, Bell Vernon, no surprise, 55-7 over Mount Pleasant. Close game early on, 7-7, and then floodgates open. Quentin Martin, a couple touchdown runs. Jake Jedico, a couple runs. Good to see him back on the field after his injury. Let me see, I lost it. There it is right there. Cole Doppelhauer continues to impress. He's the third running back. He had a 70-yard touchdown completion or touchdown reception and a 62-yard run. The story of the game is Curdy Wade coming in at quarterback. Braden Locks went down with a pinky injury. Wade played almost the whole game, finished 8 of 10 for 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, it's not going to get any easier for Bell Vernon opponents next year when Curdy Wade seems to be taking over quarterback. Colton Lee with a touchdown catch. Anthony Cruz with an 83-yard run. Bell Vernon's just a total machine.
And it almost seems like they're going to be a more dynamic offense. No offense against Locks, but with Curdy Wade, it's back more to a Devin Whitlock style run offense with the athleticism Curdy has compared to Locks, who's more of your prototypical pocket passing guy. Yeah, he can take off, use the read option, but he's not necessarily fleet of foot like Curdy Wade is or like Devin Whitlock was.
And he'll lower a shoulder into you. But, you look at the stats, rushing yards, Jedico 89, Martin 88, and Doppelhauer 76. How do you keep up with that?
And you didn't mention Anthony Cruz in there.
Anthony Cruz had an 83-yard run. I don't know. It wasn't in the
but
the stat
that's
package,
just going into everything how talented they've been. It's ridiculous how many weapons that team has, and it's not like they have to be all that, patience. They're getting giant holes opened up for him by that offensive line.
Absolutely. You'll have me and you both will be on the broadcast this week. We'll have Bell Vernon at Southmoreland. Get to see my good buddy Timmy B with the Scotties this week, so looking forward to that. Not piling on here, but Coach, I made a comment about the TJ game in the press box, and I almost hit the nail on the head of what that final score was going to be. They just run over Ringgold 71-0.
Oh, you did, right.
Something's going on at Ringgold. There's some Facebook chatter. I mean, it's a mess over there. Hopefully they can get it squashed, but it's never a good time to play a TJ team after a loss.
After a loss, no, not at all.
They were up 50-0 at halftime. They added 3 more touchdowns with the running clock in the second quarter. Luke Costco only 2 of 2, but 84 yards. Each completion was for a touchdown. Brody Evans was 1 for 1, and his completion was a touchdown. Just too much offense there for Ringgold to stop. Sarah Catholic, they're on a roll again, Alex. 47-0 over Ligonier Valley. It seems like their offense and their defense has found their way. Quadir Stribling, 18 of 27 for 321 yards, 5 touchdowns. And, Coach Hartman was a former assistant coach. You never used to see passing numbers like this back in the day.
No, not in the 90s.
When you were on the Trojans.
Yeah, we were Power Eye.
Except Chad. Chad Salisbury was putting up numbers over at Fraser. But,
the only one running the spread offense back in the 90s. That's
Woody,
for sure.
Yeah. Apollo Ridge with 48-20 win over the Yacht Cougars. Charleroi took one on the chin again, 67-0 to Wash High, who Wash High is the favorite in 2A.
Big time contender. Yeah.
Eddie Lewis, 8 carries, 160 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that Wash High is always good.
Wow.
California, your Trojans coach, 56-13 win over Carmichael's. Carmichael's obviously kind of rebuilding under a new coach for the second time. He's coming in there. But again, Jake Lehue, who, obviously you have a connection to, Zach Giletti, Lee Kwalk, Spencer Petrucci, Malachi Peak, Landon Abercrombie, whole bunch of weapons on that California team.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, much like Bell Vernon, I think California is a powerhouse in single A, and they have 4 or 5 guys that they can go to that can do some damage. They throw the ball a little bit. Again, the Tri-County South obviously never gets the respect. We struggle a lot of times in the playoffs. But I think this year California can really, truly make some noise being as well-rounded as they are. Their defense, super athletic, very fast. They have nice down linemen, and they can do a lot of things offensively. So, I'm biased with the Trojans, but, I'd like to see them make a run this year.
Well, and you have Lehue scoring a touchdown on defense every game as well as offense.
He is.
He's just a monster in the back of that defense.
He is. He covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, and I think the last Tri-County South team to make the semis was Fraser, right?
I said that, but I think someone
West Green made it.
West Green made
under
it.
Hanson.
West Green did with Ben Jackson a few years ago, and then Fraser and
didn't Cal make a run?
In 2007, we lost to Clareton in the semis.
Okay.
And that was who Fraser lost.
That was with Dante Valentino.
That was at EF.
At EF, right.
That was when Aaron Matthews and Wade were still on that team.
And we all lost to Clareton.
Everybody loses to Clareton. That's not a...
And they're pretty good again this year.
They're getting better. And I don't think they're losing a lot coming next year.
Right. They're going to have to replace quarterback again. Mike Wright's done a great job there, but I think they have a lot of young talent on that team. And, they're trending in the right direction, and they're going to be a top 4 probably seeded team if they take care of business in their last 2 weeks. And basically now that GCC knocked off Jeanette, you got to feel pretty confident the rest of the way for Clareton.
Yeah. The other games we had, Mapletown hangs on to beat Bentworth 38-36. An exciting game there on the hill in Ellsworth. Vitaly Daniels, 9 of 14, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also 17 carries, 126 yards for Mr. Daniels and a rushing touchdown. One of the most exciting games of the week. McKeesport goes in the Gateway, knocks off the Gators 38-28. Great games there by the Spell brothers. I mean, Keith Spell, 23 carries, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns. he just looks like Jerome Bettis when he's running the ball. Big 220, 230-pound kid.
And he's listed as a tight end on that team.
Right. Anthony Boyd, 18 carries, 132 yards, picking up where his older brother left off. Brad Birch, 27 of 40, 416 passing yards for the Gators. But it's the contrasting styles, and even though McKeesport hit some big plays, they were able to control the clock, time of possession, keep that Gateway offense off the field as much as possible, and shoot up the clock, and ended up coming away with the win.
Yeah, it's back-to-back years getting wins over the Gators too for McKeesport. So
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of coaches don't like this, I know, and a lot of people is like, okay, why do you have a non-conference game with only 3 weeks left in the regular season?
Right.
But look at this conference. I mean, who is Thomas Jefferson going to play? I mean, Trinity, no one thought that was going to be a game, but you really thought from the Bell Vernon game till they played McKeesport, there was no one left on their schedule that should give them a game. Obviously, Trinity pulled one of the biggest upsets of the season off, but McKeesport, you have that game scheduled with at least one more conference game before Thomas Jefferson. Okay, so let's play a good opponent, get back in our bearings in a conference game against somebody we should be able to smack around, and then we go into the biggest game of the year thus far. And I kind of like the way that schedule sets up for McKeesport, and I think it does help them in the long run coming into a game against Thomas Jefferson the last week of the season. But Thomas Jefferson now realizes, okay, we have to win this game, and we got to find a way to stick with one loss in conference play, because if they go down to 2 losses in conference play, their seeding is going to be very, very affected, I think, this year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, others already assume that Thomas Jefferson, McKeesport, the winner is going to be the 2, loser the 3, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, what there's those teams in the Parkway Conference that are coming on. Obviously Aliquippa's adorned as the 1 seed already, rightfully so.
I mean, I think Central Valley and Montour are. Yeah. I mean, they are phenomenal. Barely
Montour beat Central Valley last week
off a missed extra point.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was a 1-point game, and then how good Central Valley and Aliquippa. I think that's going to be another great game again this year.
Right. I mean, so that'll wrap up. I think. What other games did we have? We had
and West Day's been good this year in that conference too.
Right. We had Clairton hanging on to beat Rochester 18-15 in a good non-conference test for the Bears, and we had Monessen falling to who'd they lose to? It's
Jeff
Morgan. First
Morgan
time since 2011 that the Rockets are in the playoffs, I believe I saw.
It's been a while.
I read a story. So congratulations to Jeff Morgan on that big win to get into the playoffs. We'll skip over soccer for the time being.
No, real quick, Jeremy.
More football?
Yeah, going back to this Sarah Catholic, because now this is a predicament that the WPIL
They're going to have to play that game.
Because not necessarily, but here's why it's a predicament. Now, that game against Amani Christian had to be postponed with Sarah Catholic. Well, you look at Sarah Catholic, they have Apollo Ridge next week. Apollo Ridge 2-6, 1-4. You would imagine they roll over Apollo Ridge and move to 4-1 going into that Steel Valley game. Well, if they beat Steel Valley, that's where everything gets out of sorts, because they will have won against Steel Valley, but Steel Valley, in a sense, would be 6-1. Sarah Catholic would be 5-1 because of the Amani Christian postponement. And Amani Christian right in there as well could be looking at a championship as well. So barring on that Steel Valley game, it's going to be interesting. How do they play that because of the postponement?
I don't know. Because you only have 2 weeks left. So will you call it a no contest and everybody wins the section? But that's going to come into play in seeding purposes.
Or do they force Sarah to say, hey, as much as I don't think, and I understand why it's a postponement, not a forfeit, do they force Sarah to say, hey, you guys technically are going to have to list this as a forfeit?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to have to call Kara.
You don't have
to get some.
That doesn't happen very often, so it's something
right,
new.
And that's the thing. You'd hate to say you have to take a loss because a classmate was tragically killed. You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to have to give Kara a call, see maybe if we can.
And it probably would have been a little more.
Try to see, because I'm sure there's conversations going on.
There has to be, you figure. And I mean, it would have been a lot also easier if they flipped the script and beat Burrell, who they lost to by 1 point. And then it's kind of looking, okay, maybe it's a little different than when you have
it's more of a moot point if you win that game.
Yeah, exactly. Because say you win out and your only losses against or you have no losses and you're playing Amani Christian, so even if they force you to forfeit, you're still in a sense getting a section title share in the grand scheme of things. So it's going to be interesting playing that out, because you imagine Apollo Ridge at home, should be a cakewalk for Sarah Catholic, but you never know. I mean, they're playing great football as of late against Derry, York, and Ligonier Valley, and Apollo Ridge, they've struggled this year as well. So you like their chances going into that, and then it makes a trip to Campbell Field, where they kind of got beat up on last time they were there. That was when they had Najee Burt, who, one of the best players in 2A, one of the best players in WPIL that year. So it'll be interesting to see.
And it's going to be tough for Sarah, or for any team that when they play Sarah, because of Sarah's passing attack. So.
And remember, Steel Valley, they also lost to Seton LaSalle this year. Both teams lost to Seton, so right. Sarah's getting better. It'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll put the soccer talk on hold for a few minutes here, because Coach Hartman has to go get his hair did. But we'll jump into some volleyball talk. The Fraser Commodores. I sent you my bracketology bracket, and you picked it apart this morning. So, the Commodores rolling, still 14-1 overall, 12-0 in section. I think you go to Avella tonight, and then finish up Mapletown on Thursday, which I think
we'll be there.
We're both going to be there.
I'll be there.
I'll be covering it. Fraser again continues the roll. We have an interesting battle for that 3rd, 4th spot between California and Mapletown. It's hard to think California will be rooting for you this week, but they'll be rooting for you to beat Mapletown. And then it's real interesting in that Section 3 2A when we have, hold on, I lost it here. We got all of our teams are all mixed up. You got York 3 at 9-5, Brownsville at 8-6, Charleroi at 8-6. Bentworth has kind of fallen off a little bit, but Charleroi, Brownsville coming down to the wire. If they finish tied, I believe they split, so they both would go to the playoffs. That's what
they
that
did split. I can tell you that. Yeah,
that or a pigtail. They may have to play each other.
They might have to play each other in a
again.
pigtail.
Right.
Southmoreland's still rolling 17-0, who's the only team to beat you guys, which I think that gives you some argument for that number 1 seed, in my opinion. That's why in my bracket I put you guys as number 1. I think hopefully I would think the defending champion aspect of it kind of plays into a role, because it's setting up like last year. Sarah Catholic's rolling through undefeated. I think you guys play in a tougher section. I think that, you're only lost to an undefeated team. I just think that as a defending champion who beat Sarah Catholic in the championship last year, I think I would give you the nod as 1, but you've been at this long time in baseball, softball. You never know what's going to come out on Friday when these brackets come out. So,
but either way, I think it's clear as day that it's going to be Fraser or Sarah 1, Fraser or Sarah 2. I'd be shocked on this.
Should be.
But I've seen crazier things happen.
I got yelled at for putting the Burgettstown team on the 4th line, so I don't know. He yelled at me this morning about it, but I think Class A is going to come down, and I think 3A, looking at Bell Vernon, I think has a chance to clinch their first ever playoff berth. Yep. If they win tonight, they play Connellsville. Adam Brewer will be there with Jeff Helsel to get some photos. They're sitting at 6-6. Albert Gallatin right behind them at 5-7. So a good shot here for the Leopards to clinch their first berth. Then you got TJ and Ringgold at the top of that section doing their thing.
Ringgold's had a fantastic turnaround this season.
14-3, 9-3 in section, which kind of blows my mind. 2 losses to TJ, but they lost that 5 set to Bell Vernon early in the season. So, they're making a heck of a run as well with Coach Adam Thomas leading the way there.
Aubrey Sola, she's incredible.
She's a very good player. I actually played softball for Red Dogs with her dad, so I've known her since she was just a little kid, going to tournaments at York with us. So, but she turned into one heck of an athlete. So that section's going to be interesting as well. So volleyball,
SA sitting at 2nd behind KO. They've had a good year.
SA's had a good year. Sarah Catholic in Section 4. I think that section, I don't know if you'll agree, but I think that section's a little bit better than it was last year, though. Trinity Christian, played you guys tough early on in that first playoff matchup at your place. But I think that section's improved, but I still don't think it's the pound and grind like you guys face every week in and week out in Section 2. You want to look at their section real quick? There you go. GCC's in there.
There it is there.
St. Joe's.
I'll tell you, the kids will tell you that too. Like I've talked to a couple of the girls on Saracen. They said, it's our section. There's no one. We don't feel like we have any competition in there. So they'll even tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, Sarah's been a powerhouse, for quite some time, and GCC has been there the same way for years and years. They're always going to be good. You can count on those two. Again, the rest of their section. Trinity Christian's had their ups and downs, but they've had some very good teams throughout the years. And, looking at the next section there with Bishop and Eden, Bishop throughout the years is always in a title or the Final Four, and Eden Christian is coming on strong. I don't know much about them. We were, gone in AA for 4 years. I know they have a couple, really good players that can be game changers. And back to our section, West Green this year, they've had athletes in every sport up there. They're finally playing some volleyball, and Meeks is a just absolute powerhouse on the outside. We had trouble stopping her. She's tall, she's strong, she outjumps everyone. I'm not surprised that West Green is where they are, but we have a lot of parity. I mean, I think Carmichael's is an excellent team that dropped a few games early.
Yeah.
That cost them, but I mean, they have Barnyak, who is, pitched for a WPL championship last year as their outside hitter, and they have Cree, who is a sophomore, but she's 5'11" and strong, hits the ball very hard. So, Carmichael's, if we could go back a month, they'd probably be in a playoff picture for sure.
And they had a lot they were trying to replace from last year's team, a lot of early
They
injuries.
did.
So, I mean, you combine those two things, you lose a lot of your key starters,
Correct.
and then you have a lot of new players coming in, and you have injuries to some of those key pieces. It's a tough start to the year, but they have athletes.
In your section, you can't afford to drop those early games like they did. I mean, just because
No.
of the grind that it is.
Especially this year, with California being senior heavy, and they're playing some great games. I'm surprised they lost a couple games, but it just goes to show that we had some other teams that are playing really tough, and night in and night out. I mean, even for us going into Thursday, Mapletown, I worry about them big time. I mean, we played them in the Final Four last year. They get better every single game, every week, and they have great coaches, and they're coming in with a lot to prove, and they want to grab a 3 spot by upsetting us. And getting a better spot in the playoffs. So, that's going to be a tough game on Thursday night for sure. What do
you, since you're here, and we'll dive into your squad, well, Mandy's squad, the GOAT squad, as you call her. What has been the key for you guys this year? I mean, obviously the program's a model of consistency, which is what you want as coaches. But what do you think has really been the key, considering the fact you only have one senior?
Correct.
In Molly. So, what has been the key trying to get all these young players to come in, and it just seems like they just fit right in?
Well, there was a lot of uncertainty going into the season. So, you look at last year, we lose 4 seniors. We lose, Jensen, our powerhouse outside hitter. And we lost defensive players that were crucial for us last year. But the big thing, our players in the off season changed their game. So they took what they learned in a WPL championship last year. Basically talk about Addison Schultz, who's only a sophomore, Maddie Salisbury. So they were stabilizers for us last year, but now this year they're our go-tos. They worked hard in the off season, and they're having major breakout years, which honestly, we were hoping as coaches, but didn't expect them to bring what they're bringing this year. And then, freshman Allie Monak, again, in the offseason, she played a lot of travel volleyball and upped her game, and came in. She's surely not playing like a freshman this year. So, and then moving Grayson. I mean, Grayson, we always knew she was a good hitter, but we didn't have a second setter, so we had to run a 5-1. And now with Allie hitting and setting, that gives Grayson an opportunity to hit. So, the dynamic of our team has changed a lot this year, and we've become more of a team. Like when you talk about Bell Vernon in football that has 5 or 6 weapons. We have 5 girls on a nightly basis that are averaging about 8 or 9 kills apiece, rather than a Jensen going for 25 and 30 kills, and everyone knew what we were going to do with the ball. Now, I think become less predictable, which has been a big part of our success this year.
So looking at, do you know what time the brackets come out Friday? I would assume the afternoon, since it's football Friday night.
2-ish. I want to say 2-ish.
I know we're expecting soccer tomorrow at like noon. So I would imagine it'll probably be similar for you guys. Hopefully, though, I mean, you guys get to make that run again and, see how far that gets you. Hopefully you get to play a couple home games. I think we'll have a couple teams at home this year, I think.
You should, and it just depends, I mean, obviously how the bracket plays out. Are you going to end up with an even bracket or some odd teams?
Right.
But it's always a pleasure to host a game, not only for ourselves, but we like to host for other teams too. So, we're kind of in that, our geographic location kind of helps out our conference anyway with the Greene County schools. And
because you had Mapletown at home last year as well, they played
there
right after you guys played your opening round game.
That's correct.
They beat GCC there, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe it was the GCC game. Yeah.
Yep. So we'll find out, but we're hoping for the best when it comes to that for sure.
Jeremy, to go off the point, you'll look at the grand scheme of things in these brackets, the way it's lining up. It's looking like we should have a pretty even setup on the bracket. I don't think you're going to see any pigtails, which will be nice for seeding, at least in the 1A classification. I don't think we should see any of those extra fifth teams getting in, which might make things a little easier for everybody in the grand scheme of things in 1A.
That is true, and it's been pretty clear cut. The one thing I like about volleyball is when in my 26 years of experience, when you look at the teams that have been there, they're there every year. You might have a team that comes in and has a great team and then kind of goes away, but it just seems like throughout the years in volleyball, you have that same 4 or 5 that are a constant. And, and obviously I expect that again this year. And what's going to be tough is, when you go into the seedings, when you have, our team's undefeated, and the Sarah's undefeated, and the Canova's undefeated.
Right.
How do you pick a one?
Yeah.
And it's like you just put them in a bag and pick them out. But it's going to be that's going to make a very difficult Final Four game. Whether you're 1, 2, or 3, because that 2-3 game is going to be a battle.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. And Jeremy and I were talking earlier, and the one thing that really kind of, I don't want to say upsets me, but is difficult about volleyball. We play 5 games. In a set to win a match. And we were talking earlier, if you lose a game, so if you're 3-0, okay, that's great. But say you drop a set to somebody. Now all of a sudden, it's like, okay, so the next week in the rankings, things change because, they dropped a set. But, we talked about other games. If you win a 1-0 softball game, you don't get punished.
Yeah.
For not beating a team on paper 10-0.
Yeah,
or
right.
A football game where you should beat a team 42-0 and you only beat them 21-7, they're not changing the rankings. But in volleyball, it seems like, okay, so you should win 3-0. But, there's a lot of factors that go into volleyball.
Look at in the NFL, everyone's saying, Donnie, it's like, the 49ers found a way to lose. Well, if they win that game, no one's saying anything about it.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with you guys. You lose a set, it shouldn't affect anything.
But it does. And that's disheartening to me in volleyball for a few reasons. Okay, so back to what I was saying, home versus away. So a lot of home teams bring a great student body.
Right.
Volleyball's become very popular, and okay, so I know at home we have a great student body that can be a factor to teams. So, and again, you might have players hurt, you may have players sick, you may have a player who had an unfortunate death in the family, so you don't have the same lineup from night to night, and that's why you play 5 games. And in my opinion, 99.9% of the time in a 5-game match, the best team is going to come out on top. But it also affects us when you want to play younger players. So say, you're playing a non-section game and you win the first 2 games 25-10 or 25-12. Now all of a sudden, okay, so I'm getting ready for the playoffs. If my outside hitter goes down, I want to play my JV outside hitter in this varsity game or my middle hitter. Because at any given time in volleyball, someone comes down on somebody's ankle and it's a game changer. In single A, we're not 4 deep on the bench. So you play your younger players, and then all of a sudden you get yourself into a 16-16 game, and your coach is, now are you going to call a timeout and pull those players and put your starters back in, and then all of a sudden that's, it's kind of tough on the players. That's not helping their confidence, and just to win a match because you're afraid of dropping that match.
Yeah.
What I love about my wife's philosophy, we're not afraid to drop that. We're going to do what we have to do to make our team better for the playoffs. And if it costs us dropping a match, then it does. But so anyway, that's just my little my little gripe about the game of volleyball, because I don't think that if you win the match, you win the match.
Oh, absolutely.
Dropping a set here or there should not change how rankings are thought of, you know. And
I agree.
And it's tough. And again, back to, you know, like us and Sarah and Bishop, we've all been 1, 2, and 3 the whole season, you know. And it's going to be interesting to see what the powers decide who's going to get what ranking here in another couple days.
I mean, classic point. Look at 2 years ago, your last year before moving down to 1A, when, you know, a home game where everyone thought maybe Grayson got severely hurt, but it was just her being herself overreacting, in a sense, because everyone was like, oh, the season's done, Grayson's now, we don't have another setter. Well, if you're not playing backup players and you have an injury like that, you're never going to be ready to fill those shoes, fill those void when you may be called upon. And, you know, injuries like that, it could have been obviously, in the sense it was a Eliza Newcomer elbow to the face, and everyone thought she maybe tore an ACL or something, the way she was acting, but it was one of those scenarios. Well, if something was serious, do you have someone ready to step in and play?
Yeah, and I could say no. I mean, for us, we're doing the best we can, but most teams, you know, that they don't want a chance on dropping those games to get kids ready, and it's just kind of not fair in a way. You know what I mean? That's just on paper, that's how we look at things in volleyball. Yeah. And you know, for me, I don't know if it'll ever change, but I wish it would.
Well, and it's hard too, because look where the rankings come from. They come from I don't want to blast a Post-Gazette or blast a Trib, but they don't cover volleyball like a small local paper like us or the Herald or the OR does. You know what I mean? So they don't see you guys. I mean, when's the last time one of those papers was at your game? Yeah. Championship game last year, you know? So, they don't – I mean, if we would do rankings, we see it a little different. But, you know, all you're going by is a record. And, you know, I tease Mandy, what are you doing? How can you drop a set to Carmichael's? And, you know, and I know Carmichael's, you know, number one, your players know all their students. Oh, yeah. You know, and that place is a tough place to play. It's that little bandbox gym. It's a tough environment, you know. But I also know you guys have been playing, you know, Addison House, there's some great minutes at setter. And, you know, you're playing Allie Yock at libero sometime. I mean, you're playing all these other girls. Well, you know, they're not going to beat teams 25-8, like you said. And, you know, this isn't a Geibel. This isn't, you know, an Avella. It's it's Carmichael's, a perennial program. So, you know, it's just tough when, you know, there's that non-familiarity, but you're still trying to put out content for people to, you know, to see and talk about, and which is what we're doing. So,
and there was the years, remember, I mean, where they were going at it for section titles 2-3 years ago. I mean, it was Fraser Carmichael's, and so, you know, the certain teams you get up to play against, and it doesn't matter what the records may be or what's happened. I mean, you know, you're basically going to be in for a battle no matter what. I mean, that's just kind of how it works.
Well, they beat this was like 4 years ago, we had an 83 or 93 game win streak in a section.
Right, I remember that.
And they beat us at Carmichael's, and I mean, you know, they brought 60 kids and they stormed the court, and you know, we weren't real happy about that, their celebration, but I mean, that's what you got to love about high school sports. But, and that's carried over, you know, throughout the years, and we battle with them in softball. So there's always that factor. And I mean, we went up there the other night and they had a great crowd. And again, you know, Cree and Barniak are game changers, and you get yourself in close games and you get teams' best hitters in the right situations, and anything can happen. And, you know, I'm not embarrassed to have dropped a set to Carmichael, because like I said, I think they're a great volleyball team that would probably beat somebody in the playoffs, but they're, you know, unfortunately just not going to get the opportunity.
And look at the run California had in the playoffs 2 years ago.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
You know, they ran to the semis and played GCC, I think, right?
Yeah, because they beat Mapletown. They beat them twice.
Right.
And then they gave GCC, they lost in 5. I think they had GCC beat, and unfortunately they
did.
No, they did. I did that game for Trib. That was one of my.
They were up 2-0, right?
They were, I believe.
They were. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was a game like I'm doing, and I remember I was like shocked because like I'd been covering GCC all playoffs. That was when they had the Hess girls, Petnich. I mean, that was a really good team. I mean, that was when you, of course, would have those constant battles between GCC and Bishop Canevin for years in the finals.
You know, then also I want to, like, what makes volleyball tough is you try to play tournaments on weekends. So you don't want to play too many throughout the season, but you want to play 2 or 3. And that's a great place where you can play your younger players where, okay, you go into a tournament if I lose to a Sarah or a TJ, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But on the other hand, like in a situation like our situation, half of my players are softball players.
Right.
So on weekends,
Travel ball.
they're with their travel balls. So
Right.
we've only played one tournament this fall because I don't have the kids to take to a tournament. I have 2 or 3 girls that are trying to gain softball scholarships, and they're juniors, and this is their big year of recruiting. And, so again, it goes back to, in everyone's situation is different. So in our situation, we're trying to play non-conference games and get our younger players in those games without trying to worry about losing the set to lose your ranking.
Right.
So it's really a double-edged sword. It's tough.
And plus, like Mandy said, you guys were supposed to be going to that South Fayette tournament. They're clerical error, but she knew coming in, well, what are they going to do if we end up going? They're going to put you up against Sarah Catholic.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's, you know what could be looming down the line. So that's a matchup you probably don't want to play just a one game kind of, you want to.
Well, not just tough too. I mean, a Saturday tournament is nowhere near a Thursday night semifinal game.
I mean, it's a one game,
25 points.
And if you don't, and you're done.
That's correct.
So it's a tough situation for a coach to be in as well. But like you said, when you're using it for reps for younger players, then, that's what you want.
I mean, especially it's big for schools like you because you don't have the luxury where you could go and be a Thomas Jefferson and put your JV kids out in the court against the varsity and actually give the varsity a competitive match. Because, I mean, that's just when you're at a school that big, your third, fourth line is better than a lot of smaller schools' best players they have just because they have that pool to pick from.
Correct. And we're running with 12 kids.
Right.
So it's hard to set things up in practice and duplicate game speed. And when you have a smaller team, and then, we're resting some kids during practice who are a little banged up at this point in the year. And it gets really tough to get yourself better. And, you have to do those things when you can in your exhibition games or even your section games when you're winning to get kids in and prepare for October and November. So, but anyway, it's going to be fun. I can't wait to see how it plays out and see the bracket and
Start dissecting.
It should be a good tournament. Yeah.
Start dissecting that bracket. I'm sure we'll be talking about it Thursday night.
Absolutely.
We'll let you get out of here since you got to go get a haircut.
It's hard to make me pretty, but I'm going to try my best.
Well,
hey, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks,
it's always a pleasure.
Take that hat with you.
I wore this for you today.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I should have worn my Houston hat then.
Oh. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. We could be 5-1 right now. So.
It could, I mean, you're not Pitt. You're not where Pitt is. So they now got a starting quarterback. So it's a tight end, and I don't know. It's a mess over there, but we'll see.
I hear you. All right, guys. Well, take care.
All right, thanks,
We'll
Don.
see you.
We'll jump into some soccer talk.
Real quick, Jeremy, before we just go back on that point about the Brownsville and Charleroi with their playoffs.
Yeah.
Charleroi, they are playing Washington, who is 0-16, so looks like a sure win for them.
Right, they're at Waynesburg tonight. I just asked. I actually just emailed Coach Abbott talking about our meeting tomorrow, and I asked her. I said, "Did you clinch?" She said, "We're still tied for fourth. Tonight will do it for us, I believe, with a win against Waynesburg, and then we play Washington.
And then
on
Brownsville has Washington left as well. So they're sitting in a very good spot. Charleroi beat Waynesburg this
I was going to say,
year,
they did beat – I think they swept them, didn't they? Or 3-1.
It was something like that. Yeah, I think it was 3-1. But, I mean, that's a
never easy when you have to ride. You have to take that hour bus trip down to Waynesburg, though. So
not at all. But, I like their chances of making a good second-half run for Coach Abbott's team.
Yeah, let me hold on one second. I'm responding in the chat here. But
I haven't even looked at the chat today.
Actually, well, it's Delana, our number one fan,
of
always.
Course.
We will have, before we jump into soccer, let's jump into golf real quick. Congratulations to the Bell Vernon boys team winning the WPIL title on Thursday. I think it was by 4 or 5 strokes over Neshannock. Playing on their home course at Cedarbrook, but didn't play like their home course, contrary to the belief. Some double cuts, double rolled the greens. It was a tough situation, but congratulations to the Leopards for winning that WPIL title. Right now, we have a couple players. I'll jump onto the leaderboard real quick. We have a few local players playing for state championships today. Yesterday and today. Yesterday was the first round. We have Fraser's Nixon Eardley Rogan Maloney and Jordan Masello on the boys' side. We have Elizabeth Ford's Maya Morgan on the girls' side. Looking at the leaderboard right now, we have Nixon Early currently tied for 12th, 2 over par, sitting 8 strokes off the lead. Elizabeth Ford, freshman Aaron DeJunis, tied with Eardley, sitting at 2 over par. He actually was even par after the first round, being 2 over for the day.
Yeah, Eardley was 1 over after the first round. I saw that.
Yeah,
he was at 7th coming into
He's
today.
1 over today. Let me see if we have any more to local. Let me see where Maloney tied for 17th. He's 4 over on the day. He was sitting at 1 over par heading into today, through 13 today.
And, not ideal conditions to go up and golf it, and let alone you look at these kids that come up from this area. I mean, how often do you get up to a Penn State to play that course compared to the courses around here? Even if it's not a course you're used to, it's not your home course like Bell Vernon played on at Cedarbrook, it's a course you're way more familiar with.
And we have Bell Vernon's Jordan Masello sitting at 9 over, tied for 30th, along with South Allegheny's Josh Neske, who is also 9 over, 1 over on the day. Masello having a tough day, 6 over par through 14 on the day. I'm going to get a quick update on Maya Morgan real quick before we move on to the soccer talk.
And again, I'd take any of these scores.
Absolutely. That's what I told Rogan Maloney when I interviewed him. He's like, this is probably one of the worst rounds I've ever shot on the course. And he shot like a 79. I'm like, I would die to shoot an 85.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Tells you just how good these kids are all around the area.
Absolutely. Maya Morgan tied for 8th place, 2 over on the day. She's at +6 for the tournament, 12 strokes back. Plymouth White Marsh's Rihanna Gunaratne is 6 under altogether. Yeah, she just earned herself a Division I scholarship today.
I'd say so. I think Morgan Mull on her way to that as well. I mean, she has a couple more years.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 more Whippeal titles, but she's going to battle with Peters Township's Ellie Benson, who's now 4th, +3, and even par for the day. So, but yeah, Maya Morgan, plenty of years. She knows. I mean, She ran to the Whippeal title. She knew Benson was going to bounce back. Obviously, they know each other from competing against each other all season long. So, but them two are going to battle for the next 2 years going forward.
Oh, absolutely.
For Whippeal and state titles. So, congratulations to all our golfers up there. Now, tomorrow, the Bell Vernon boys team coming out of the Whippeal as champions. They will tee off trying to win a state title as well. Obviously, the second state title in Bell Vernon area history. Could come home after today, but or after tomorrow, but we'll see. We'll keep tabs on them. I'll recap all of today's final round action from up at Penn State. I think Maya Morgan's playing the blue course. The boys are playing the white course. So we'll recap that in tomorrow's MVI. But looking at soccer, brackets come out at noon tomorrow, from what I understand, reading the email from Ethan at the Whippeal. So stay tuned for that in Thursday's edition of the MVI. I'm not sure how we're going to break it down yet, if I'll do both stories, if Jose, when he's not off, jumps in, does one of the stories. But looking at yesterday's action real quick, for the second year in a row, Alex, Bell Vernon girls failed to qualify for the playoffs. Obviously, they played the juggernaut in Elizabeth Ford last night. Bell Vernon wins, or EF wins 5-0. Brooklyn Baldensberger, another big night for the Warriors, and the defense for Elizabeth Ford obviously is what. They have plenty of offense, but the defensive back line is what's going to carry
Davis
them.
was back for that game, right?
Davis was back. I think they split, her and Sammy Malik split reps again to get the clean sheet for Elizabeth Ford in the win.
And you wonder, and this is nothing against Malik, young, inexperienced against Thomas Jefferson. You wonder if Davis plays that game.
Maybe it's
that's
a different
story.
Sure.
But obviously, I think the injuries and the yellow card to Graham changed the script as well in that game. But, Bell Vernon, what was it, 20 straight years? Because I remember me and you figuring out the math last year, late after they didn't clinch. And so after almost 20 straight years, it might have been 20.
Yeah.
I think it was. And then missed the last year. They almost looked like they had no business of coming close to the playoffs this year. And they made a great late rally. But so many injuries early on in the season, ACLs, MCLs, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not what you wanted to see for Bell Vernon coming out. And when you add those injuries to losing your leading goal scorer from last year, tough sledding. But I think better times are ahead for that.
They are.
Program.
They're a very young team and great contributions from freshman Sailor Lee on the back line, Chessa Mertz up top. I remember writing their scores when they were in middle school. They were always in there.
I believe there's 20-plus kids on the middle school program as well that Coach Lovett was telling me. So, I mean, soccer's growing at Bell Vernon. I think that's going to give them
For sure. I mean, Bell Vernon, perennially, they always have a really good program. Yeah. It's just a matter of, developing the youth and getting them ready. The group that, in my daughter's grade, the 6th grade group, even on my hoop team, I have a lot of travel soccer players. So, I'm interested to see what happens when they get to 7th grade next year and join that middle school program. Still looking ahead to the future for Bell Vernon, but, in a section with TJ, who 15-1, they ran the gauntlet 14-0,
and they have a lot coming back next year.
They're perennially there. EF, they're not going anywhere either. So it's going to be tough sledding for anybody that's in a section with those two.
It's really a battle for third at that point for everybody
Absolutely.
else if you're with EF and Thomas Jefferson. But, it's teams that EF, it's been a long time since they've got a playoff win on the girls' side. And, that's on their mind that they want to find a way to get that. And I think the same thing, Thomas Jefferson, they want to prove that they can make a deep run in this postseason as well.
Yeah, and Bell Vernon was there. They had that big win. The big win over Laurel Highlands a couple weeks ago really got them in the position. All they needed to do was tie last night because Connellsville beat Laurel Highlands. So if they could have got a tie somehow against EF, we would be talking about how, they survived and get into the playoffs this year. But just wasn't meant to be. They play tonight against Greensburg-Salem to finish off their season. Speaking of finishing seasons, well, no, because we have an update, but Charleroi beats Monessen last night 5-1. McKenna DeYounger, 4 goals, now up to 97 career goals after scoring 4 last night. Bella Corrado with the other. She now sits at 101 goals on the season. She did notch her 60th career assist last night.
Not a bad career.
No, not at all. Not as a midfielder,
No, not at all. I mean, and you hope that, Boots can find a way to join that club as well. It's going to be tough sledding, especially with kind of how this is going to play out. And even if it wasn't going to be this way, I think it'd be very tough to get, 3 more goals?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, maybe he gets it in the playoffs, but...
She may. I mean, and you figure, I'm thinking Charleroi, me and Chad talked about this last night. I can see the WPIAL doing something crazy and putting those 3 teams from that one section as 3 of the top 5 seeds. I mean, Springdale, Riverview, and Freedom is the other one.
Oh, yeah.
They're 3 of the top 5 teams. They did it, last year or 2 years ago. I mean, we see it more in basketball. They put multiple teams from the same section in. But
they're starting to care a little less about repeat matchups.
Absolutely.
Which I think it should be that way. You know what? If they're the best teams, reward them.
Absolutely. But Charleroi, sitting there with 1 loss. So I think they're going to be in that top 5. I would put them right now at 5. I have GCC moving up onto the 4 line ahead of Charleroi, but that might not be the case.
They love to reward section championships.
They do. So we'll see what happens. But for DeYounger, trying to get that 100 goals, I think there's a really good shot. They are going to play that game with EF tomorrow night. We saw we got the text. They're going to do 30-minute halves tomorrow night at EF. So
how about we just do that in general for soccer at high school level? Or bring in the mercy rule again. We're going to bring that back up, 10-goal mercy rule.
Well, not even that, but, once you get to 6, 7 goals, let's start taking minutes off the clock for every goal scored. But, yeah, so, we'll see what happens when these brackets are announced at noon tomorrow. Bentworth, they finish up the season. Actually, I think they're going to play Southmoreland, but they finished off their section season out of the playoffs. 8-7-1, 5-6-1 overall. They shut out Best Center last night 4-0. 4 different goal scorers: Emily Kisner, Megan Keterakis, Cassidy Sicatano, and Meredith Allender all scored. Bentworth is another team, very disciplined, great coaching there from Tyler Hamstra. But, Brino Orsatti goes down with an ACL injury early in the year. That kind of puts them in a hole. But they'll be back. Very young team there. Looking at the brackets, I don't think we're going to see any surprises. I think Charleroi boys are the number 1 overall seed in Class A. I don't know where you put Bell Vernon boys. They're going to get a high seed, probably a home game. Charleroi will likely be playing at home. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Charleroi's also at Bell Vernon.
And they kind of do a stack
as well. They stacked our local teams together.
And I like the playoff stacks. I really do. I mean, it makes for a nice crowd at those events, and I think you get a lot of, especially like last year we were talking about with Donnie, when they had Mapletown GCC playing after Fraser played their game. I mean, Fraser people stuck around to watch that game.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know I did the first game. I stayed around to watch that as well. I mean, it's things you want to see, and I think I love seeing those, stacked, contests, especially if it can bring a couple local teams in the same venue.
And you have that situation. Well, I don't know about Charleroi and Bell Vernon boys, but for the most part, the local schools will support each other.
Yeah.
So you get good crowds. But looking ahead, in the boys, you're gonna have Thomas Jefferson and Ringgold in the AAA bracket. TJ finishing 14-2-1. Ringgold 11-4-1 overall.
I'll tell you who can't wait for the Ringgold soccer season to be done.
Who's that?
Rick Kalinowski.
He got some players.
He wants Owen Haywood back.
He wants Owen Haywood. Looking in Section 2 or Section 1, 2A, Elizabeth Ford squeaks in, tied for third with East Allegheny, sitting at 10-5 overall. 10-5-1 overall. That could be a matchup we see. Charleroi and EF again. Charleroi, knocked them off first. I'm sure Casey would be real excited about that one. Again, Bell Vernon boys win Section 3, 2A, 14-2 overall. For the Leopards, obviously, any team that plays the Leopards are going to look to shut down Tyler Kovac. 47 goals on the season. A great season for him.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Trevor.
Did I say Tyler?
You did.
God darn it. My bad, Trev. My bad.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, everybody knew what I meant.
But hey, that could be the issue with Bell Vernon, though. If you get to a team that finds a way to shut him down,
you get one of these lockdown defensive teams.
Who's going to step up to help carry the offense? I mean, he's been so good this year at it, but eventually you need help.
Absolutely,
especially come playoff time.
And they have players that can score. They've had other scorers, and it seems like the last couple games there's been, they've been a little bit more high scoring. They've gotten a little bit more scoring from the other players. But that's something they're definitely going to need going forward. Looking at Section 2 again, we mentioned Charleroi, who I believe is the number 1 seed, but right there you got Bentworth sitting underneath them at 14-2 overall.
I think Bentworth gets the 2.
You think? Nah, I don't know if they're going to get the 2 though. They'll give it to Sewickley Academy.
Not the 2, top 4, I guess I should say. So I would think
I can see him getting the 5. Is the best second place team. I see them getting the 5 and a possible rematch against Charleroi in a semifinal match. But that's just me. But yeah, you have Seton LaSalle sitting at 12-2, Borough 12-2, Sewickley Academy 12-2-1. I just think that the Whippeal might go chalk there, give the section champions the top 4. But, Sarah Catholic, 12-4 overall. They did have control of Section 4, but they lost to Seton LaSalle. Obviously, that was after the death of the classmate. So, so Sarah Catholic, they dropped a few of their last couple games. So we'll see what they can do in the playoffs as well. We'll take a quick look at the girls' standings as I pull them up here. We already talked about Charleroi, where I think personally they could end up on the 4 line, but 4 or 5 I think is where I see the Cougars fitting, just because Class A is so loaded with Freedom. They're 13-3 overall, but you also got Winchester, Thurston, Olsh, but then you're looking at Riverview and GCC, from Section 1 in Springdale, 11-3 overall. I mean, I think Charleroi 14-1, but they might fall to a 5 or a 6. So you never know. It depends. It's been a while since Charleroi's been there.
Yeah.
So who knows what the Whippeal will do there. Looking at 2A, York will make the playoffs, 5-13 overall, probably looking at, a 16 seed or even a play-in game if they need any there. I don't think they will, though. I think it's going to be chalk 16. Looking at 3A, though, obviously TJ and EF, we talked about two really good teams there.
I think TJ ends up with a pretty good seed. I mean, just with their losses being only to Bethel Park, obviously you're not going to sneak into the top.
I think TJ is going to get the 3. I think there'll be 3 behind Mars and Plum, probably. Latrobe, they didn't play Latrobe this year. I know they played them last year. Latrobe's up there too, 12-2. There are only 2 losses to Plum in section play. But Montour 12-2-3 overall. South Fayette also.
I think they're in prime real estate to make a decent run this year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, their depth is unbelievable, and you notice, when we get their scores, it's always 4 or 5 different scores.
Oh my gosh!
We know Lamenza can go off for 4 goals a game if she wants to, but Sammy Maglico's coming up. I'm not. I won't hide the fact I put them both on my nomination for him for the Rosen Steel Award. I think they both had great seasons. Maglico kind of coming out of nowhere and coming into her own as a player. I think a lot of our teams have a chance to make a good run. Obviously, I think Charleroi boys are the favorite out of all of our local teams to get to Highmark this year. Again, we should say. But I think they win it between you and me. So we'll see, how that goes as we get ready here for the playoffs in soccer. Real quick, I will recap. We got to have our Cal U segment, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We got to get to Cal U. I know neither one of our Vulcan alums couldn't make it to the game over the weekend. Cal U beat Seton Hill 41-14. Another big day for the for the passing game for the Vulcans. Omari Hopkins with a touchdown catch, 132 yards receiving for the Vulcans. Big game this week coming up. They go to Slippery Rock for first place in the PSAC West. Right now it's Slippery Rock and Cal U, and I think Gannon's tied with them as well. So another big game on the docket. Nice to see they didn't have a letdown against Seton Hill. There you go. I got the stats pulled up. We could take a look at them. California rolled out to a 34-0 lead at the half and just kind of, we could say they cruised to the win over the Griffins, who, continue constant rebuilding mode up there in Greensburg. Let me see if I can pull this up here.
I think you're looking with, this game this week for Cal. I mean, it's going to be a huge test, though. I mean,
anytime
we're talking about
to
Slippery Rock.
There.
I mean,
right.
You'd feel really nice if you're able to get that at home. But Slippery Rock's just proved, time and time again. It's just as you said, Jeremy. Anytime you got to take those long bus rides, even though it's just a Slippery Rock, but still, got to be up on the bus to get out there and try to, put together a big game and really could change the course of how the next couple years I think are going to go for California. You get a big win against Slippery Rock, and I think that's one of those statement type victories they could.
It's a statement victory, and it's a victory when it comes to recruiting.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think Cal one place they got an advantage here is recruiting wise. They got a good young squad. Davis Black, another great day. 14 to 23, 300 yards, 4 touchdown passes. Eric Willis, a 75-yard pass. Dom Solomon, the Clareton grad, with a 53-yard interception return. Hopkins, 2 touchdown passes, 1 35-yard and a 32-yarder from Davis Black. 3. He had a 22-yarder as well. I think, Coach Salisbury, his offense continues to produce decent quarterbacks, good quarterbacks. When you add the rushing game, you didn't have Eric McCann, you didn't have Bobby Boyd going over 100 yards, but doing just enough to, show some balance. That's what Coach Dunn always wants, a balanced attack. And we see, Naz is blowing me up here. But, California rolling to another victory, 41-14. Good luck to the Vulcans this week at Slimy Pebble, as we like to call it, down on Harvard on the Mon. So go get that win up at Slippery Rock. Get yourselves into the PSAC championship game. Otherwise, what else we have? You got anything else, Alex?
We got the bleacher creature lurking in the vicinity.
We do have the bleacher creature is out and about. not much on his mind this week. I think I kind of surprised him when I hit the old bat phone and had to say, hey, we're a day early this week. So he got right back to us, though. Just some thoughts from the bleacher creature and the thoughts from the bleachers here. Parents and kiddos, as the regular seasons of fall sports start to wind down and the, quote, awards and acknowledgments start to roll out, please understand this. There are so many factors that go into this, and sometimes it's not about who puts up the best stats, who's the best player, or who's the most valued player on a team. Don't let these awards deter you from your main goals. People recognize, people know, and people see. Stay focused and keep on grinding. Until next week, sincerely, the Bleacher Creature. So there's the thoughts from the Bleacher Creature. So thank you to him for his support always. Thank you also to everybody in the chat. Delana Garrow Davis, always our number one fan. And there's our buddy Casey McIntyre saying TJ head coach Sean Richter is the GOAT.
Yeah, Sean's fantastic.
He
great
is.
Great to work with, too.
You know who else I'm finding a fondness for? Satiri Sarakas from EF.
Yeah.
Great guy. Great system there at EF. He knew he was walking into a great situation there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Coming over from the Penn Trafford boys squad, working now with the EF girls, expecting big things there as well. So I don't know about you, but I have nothing else. I have no airing of grievances. I don't want to get in trouble.
And Shootout Classic quickly approaching.
Shootout Classic got thrown for a little bit of loop, but we have a meeting tomorrow. We will discuss that. I'm sure Naz I had to print all the schedules off for him so he can try to do the schedule. So I'm probably sure that's why he was calling, or making sure I didn't hurt anybody's feelings today. I don't know.
Or both.
Yeah, whatever. But, yeah, we appreciate it. But I have nothing else. You have nothing else?
Good. No,
We're
I'm good.
I don't have Jose's script, but thank you, of course, to all of our sponsors. I know Planet Roof is a big one, Highway Appliance, everybody for supporting us. I think you reached out. Plans are underway for the 100th episode. Kinda. Yeah. We're working on that. We expect Delana Garrow Davis to be there. Bring my buddy LJ as well. I'm sure Casey will show up for that as well. We might have to have some beers or stuff in a cooler or food at least. But we'll see. We'll get that. But for Alex Lyons, I'm Jeremy Salou.
The ghost of Jose Negron.
Jose, anything to say? Nope. Okay, we're good. Signing off of episode 87. Tune in next week for episode 88. Same usual time, right? Back to our normal Wednesday.
Yeah, because we have the meeting tomorrow. Only reason we moved it up.
Yeah, shootout. Big, important, big-time newspaper stuff, as we like to say. But, yeah, Alex Lyons, Jeremy Salou, signing off. See you next week.